In this story, a young woman faces the first big challenge in her marriage just a few days after the wedding. An unexpected visit to her dacha, summer house, turns into a real conflict when her bossy mother-in-law suddenly shows up with her son's ex-wife and 2 kids and says, "They need a break, and you'll cook and pay for everything." But no one expected the new bride to be someone with a strong personality and clear boundaries, even with family. Hello, dear listeners. You're on the channel Revenge Fox, and I'm happy to share my new original story with you. Enjoy the listen. Kristina Khalilova always saw herself as a realist. At 32, she had worked as a translator for 3 different companies, saved up enough to buy her own apartment, and even a dacha. She had gone through a few relationships and knew what she wanted from life. So when she met Igor Lebedev 6 months ago at a company event through mutual friends, she quickly saw husband potential. Igor was calm and reliable, 38 years old. He worked as a design engineer, owned his own apartment and car, and had been divorced for 3 years. He didn't pay alimony and had no kids of his own. His ex-wife, Daria, had left him for someone else and taken her 2 daughters from a previous marriage with her. Igor didn't seem too upset. He said the girls weren't his, and his relationship with Daria had ended in constant fighting. They dated for 4 months, and Kristina realized he was the kind of man she could build a life with. He didn't drink, didn't smoke, had no debts or weird hobbies. The only thing that worried her, he was very attached to his mother. Larissa Eduardovna, his mom, called him every day. She told him what to buy, where to go on vacation, even what to wear. But Kristina thought that would change. He was a grown man, and sooner or later, he'd learn to set boundaries. They had a small wedding with just close family and friends. Larissa behaved politely, even though it was clear she didn't really like Kristina. "Too independent," she whispered to her sisters. Back in our day, wives were more obedient. Kristina ignored the comments. The important thing was that Igor was happy. They spent their honeymoon in Turkey, 2 weeks by the sea. No calls from his mother, no responsibilities. Igor was a great travel partner, kind, thoughtful, and funny. For the first time in years, Kristina felt relaxed and truly enjoyed life. They got back to Moscow on a Sunday evening. The apartment was quiet and smelled a bit dusty. Their suitcases sat in the hallway while they lay on the couch, cuddling and making plans for the future. Kristina was telling her husband about her dacha and how they had to go there next weekend. She bought the dacha 3 years ago with her own money. It was a small piece of land, just 600 square meters, in a village near Moscow. It cost her 500,000 rubles, almost all her savings at the time. The house was tiny, only 3 rooms, but the land was neat, with fruit trees and garden beds ready to use. For the first 2 years, Kristina went there every weekend by herself. She fixed the place up, did small repairs, replaced old windows, painted the fence, planted flower beds and roses, and made a vegetable garden. It was her escape from her stressful job doing technical translations with never-ending deadlines. "You'll see how beautiful it is," she told her husband while gently stroking his hand. "Especially now, at the end of June, the roses are blooming and the tomatoes have started growing. We can spend every weekend there." Igor nodded and smiled. He was a true city guy, but the idea of spending time in nature with his wife didn't scare him. In fact, he was already imagining himself reading in a hammock while Kristina worked in the garden nearby. The phone rang Monday morning while they were still eating breakfast. Igor looked at the screen and frowned. "It's Mom," he said and answered the call. "Good morning," came his mother's excited voice, loud enough for Kristina to hear through the speaker. Larissa Eduardovna talked fast and nervously, jumping from one topic to another. Igor just muttered vague responses, occasionally saying, "Yeah, okay, I get it." "What happened?" Kristina asked when he hung up. "Daria and the kids don't have a place to stay," Igor said, looking confused. "Mom says we have to help. They don't know where to go." Kristina set down her coffee cup. Daria, the ex-wife. They divorced 3 years ago, when Daria left Igor for another man. As far as Kristina knew, they hadn't been in contact since. Igor didn't even pay child support because the kids weren't his. "And what does your mom suggest?" Kristina asked carefully.
I don't know yet, Igor said.
She said she'll call back tonight once she figures things out. Kristina nodded, but a bad feeling was already growing inside her. She knew Larissa Eduardovna well enough to know she wouldn't be this upset over an ex-daughter-in-law for no reason. Something was definitely off. That evening, Larissa called again. This time, the conversation was long and emotional. Kristina heard her mother-in-law telling some dramatic story, and Igor kept sighing and saying, "Oh no," over and over. Finally, he hung up and turned to Kristina. Daria sold her apartment and moved in with her new boyfriend, he began. But it turns out he's married. His wife found out and caused a huge scene. Daria and the kids were kicked out. I see, Kristina said. Where are they now? At a friend of Mom's, but they can only stay there a couple nights. Daria says she's out of money. She spent everything on that guy. The kids are crying, there's no space. Kristina listened, feeling more and more annoyed. A grown woman sold her apartment, didn't make sure her kids had a home, got involved with a married man, and now everyone else is expected to fix it. Mom thinks we should help, Igor added. The kids aren't to blame, after all. Help how? Kristina asked, though she already had a feeling. Well, just let them stay for a while. We have the dacha, Igor said. There it was. Kristina understood right away what this was really about. His mom, Larissa Eduardovna, had already made a plan. She saw Kristina's dacha as the perfect free place to put Igor's ex-wife and her kids. 3 rooms, a yard, fresh air, and most importantly, no cost. Igor, Kristina said slowly, the dacha is mine. I bought it with my own money. I've spent the last 3 years fixing it up. It's my personal space. Of course, sweetheart, he said. But it's just for a short time, until Daria finds a job and a place to live. And how long would that take?
Kristina asked.
Igor shrugged. He clearly hadn't thought about any of the practical stuff. To him, this was just a quick problem to fix. A month, maybe 2? Daria's educated. She'll find something. Kristina thought back to what she knew about Daria. 34 years old, divorced twice, 2 kids, no job for the past 3 years. She had been living off child support from her first husband and money from boyfriends. Finding work at that age without experience or contacts wouldn't be easy. And who's going to feed them? Pay for electricity, water?
Kristina asked.
Mom said Daria gets some child support money. Plus, we could help with groceries. Kristina felt herself boiling inside. So she was supposed to not only give them her house, but also feed them too? Kristina, come on. It's about the children. They're only 8 and 10. It's not their fault their mom messed up. It was a strong point, and Kristina knew it. The kids truly weren't to blame. But she also knew that if she said yes now, she'd be stuck. Daria would settle in, make excuses to stay longer, and Larissa would keep pressuring her with guilt and family duty. Let her go to social services, Kristina said firmly. There are special programs for mothers with kids who need help. Mom says that's humiliating. Daria comes from a good family. But selling her apartment and moving in with a married man wasn't humiliating? Kristina replied. Igor went silent. He wasn't used to such direct questions. In his family, problems were handled quietly, with no drama and no conflict. On Tuesday, Larissa Eduardovna called twice, first Igor, then Kristina directly. That second call was long and exhausting. She went on and on about the poor kids, about a mother's duty, about how important it is to help family during hard times. Kristina, sweetheart, she said in a sugary voice, I know the dacha is yours, but how can you think about property when we're talking about children? Larissa Eduardovna, Kristina said calmly, I'm willing to help with money for a rented room, but I'm not letting strangers live in my house. Strangers? Her tone turned cold. Daria was my son's wife. Those children were part of our family. How can you call them strangers? They are strangers, Kristina said. Daria divorced Igor 3 years ago. They haven't spoken since. But family bonds don't just disappear. Larissa's voice rose. A real wife should support her husband's decisions. Igor hasn't decided anything, Kristina said. This is your idea, not his. I'm his mother. I know what's right for him. Kristina hung up. Her hands were shaking from anger. She knew exactly what was going on. Larissa was using the situation to prove who was in charge. This wasn't about helping Daria. It was a power play, a test to see if she could put the daughter-in-law in her place. That evening, Kristina and Igor had a serious talk. Kristina made her position very clear. The dacha was her property, bought with her own money. She wasn't responsible for solving his ex-wife's problems. If Daria was in trouble, there were official ways to get help. Igor listened and nodded, but he looked lost. He was stuck between his wife and his mother, not sure what the right thing to do was. Maybe just for a couple of weeks, he asked at last. Until she finds a job? No, Kristina said. Because a couple of weeks will turn into a month into half a year, and I'll end up being their unpaid maid in my own house. Igor didn't answer. Deep down, he knew she was right. But he couldn't shake the habit of always doing what his mother said. On Wednesday, Larissa Eduardovna made an announcement, not a request, that she would be bringing Daria and the kids to the dacha on Saturday. She didn't ask. She just informed them like it was already decided. Kristina listened and calmly said, I won't open the gate. We'll see about that, her mother-in-law replied and hung up. Kristina sat in her chair, looking out the window. She knew this was a turning point. Either she stood her ground now, or spent the rest of her life doing what Larissa Eduardovna told her to do. The choice was clear. Saturday morning was warm and sunny. Kristina woke up at 6:30, as usual on weekends, and looked out the window. The dacha was peaceful, just like always, green grass still damp from last night's rain, blooming rose bushes, neat garden beds with tied-up tomato plants. Igor was still asleep. He was a night owl and liked to relax even more at the dacha. Kristina quietly got dressed and stepped outside. The cool morning air tickled her bare feet. Her slippers left wet prints from the dew. She picked up the watering can and walked to the garden. The tomatoes were her pride and joy, 3 types, cherry, plum, and big, meaty ones. She had grown them from seeds, transplanted the seedlings, moved them into the greenhouse, tied each one by hand. Now they were full of green tomatoes the size of walnuts. Just one more month until the first harvest. As she watered the plants, Kristina thought about the day ahead. Larissa had said she was coming, but Kristina hoped it was just an empty threat. Maybe she'd come to her senses and realize she couldn't just take over someone else's property. Around 10 a.m., Kristina heard the sound of a car engine. It was getting closer along the narrow dacha road, weaving between the plots. Kristina straightened up and listened. The car was definitely heading to their gate. A worn-out blue Lada Kalina pulled up and stopped. Larissa Eduardovna's car. The engine went silent. Then came the sound of doors opening. 1, 2, 3, 4. Kristina set down the watering can and slowly walked toward the fence. 4 people stepped out of the car. First was Larissa Eduardovna, a full-figured woman of 58 wearing a bright pink blouse and jeans. Her dyed red hair was teased into a fluffy style. She immediately went to the trunk and started pulling out bags. Then came a tall, skinny woman in tight jeans and a crop top.
Daria.
Kristina had only seen her in photos, but recognized her right away. Her dark hair was tied back in a ponytail, her face had no makeup, and her eyes looked tired. Daria looked around with the awkward expression of someone who knew she didn't belong. From the back seat, 2 little girls climbed out. The older one, around 10, looked just like her mom, slim, dark hair, and a serious face. The younger one, about 8, looked more like her dad, light curls, round cheeks, and curious eyes. Both girls were wearing simple summer clothes and looked tired. Larissa Eduardovna had already pulled 3 huge bags and 2 suitcases from the trunk. She was barking out orders, telling Daria what to carry and what to leave in the car. "Don't forget the bed sheets," she called. "And take the bag with the grains. We'll cook ourselves. No point counting on anyone else." Daria said nothing and quietly hauled the bags. The girls sat down on the suitcases and watched. The older one whispered something to the younger, who giggled. Kristina stood still near the garden, watching. She wanted to see exactly what Larissa was planning. Maybe this was just pressure, show up with everyone and hope Kristina would give in. Or maybe Larissa really believed she could make this work. Then Larissa saw her. "Kristinka," she called cheerfully, waving. "Come help us. There's too much stuff for just us girls." Kristina walked to the fence, but didn't open the gate. A tall metal barrier stood between her and the unwanted guests. She felt safe behind it. "Hello," she said calmly. Larissa immediately shifted into full-on speech mode. Hands on hips, she launched in. "Kristina, I know you and Igor are a young couple with your own life, but now's not the time to be selfish. Look at those children," she said, pointing to the girls. "They have nowhere to go. Their mother was tricked, taken advantage of. Now they're out on the street. And what? We're just going to turn away." Daria stood beside her, playing the role of the helpless victim, eyes down, heavy sighs, sometimes dabbing at imaginary tears. The kids looked at Kristina with interest, not fear. Clearly, they were used to moving around and seeing drama. "You've got 3 rooms," Larissa went on. "One for you and Igor, one for Daria, and one for the girls. There's enough space for everyone. Daria will help around the house, and the kids are quiet. They won't bother you." Kristina couldn't believe the nerve. Larissa wasn't just asking for help. She was assigning rooms in someone else's house like it was hers. "And you'll do the cooking," Larissa continued. "You've got the experience, and the kitchen's better here. Daria doesn't have a job, no money for groceries yet, but she'll pay you back once she's back on her feet." "Utilities too? That's on me."
Kristina asked.
"Well, for now, yes. Come on, it's just water and electricity. It's cheap. You'd be doing a good thing." Kristina realized Larissa had thought it all through. She expected Kristina to provide a house, food, cover the bills, and even cook for 4 people. And in return, Kristina would get the lovely experience of living with her husband's ex-wife and her children. "Larissa Eduardovna," Kristina said calmly, "I told you on the phone. I'm not offering the dacha." The smile dropped from Larissa's face. Her eyes turned cold. "What do you mean you're not? Look at those kids. They have no place to stay." "That's not my problem," Kristina replied. "Daria made her own choices. This is her mess." "She made a mistake," Larissa snapped, raising her voice. "People make mistakes. But the children did nothing wrong." Daria sniffled and pulled the younger girl close. The child rested her face on her mother's shoulder, pretending to be scared. The older daughter watched the whole scene with clear irritation. "Families should help each other," the mother-in-law continued. "Or, do you think that just because you're married now, you don't owe anyone anything?" "Daria is not my family," Kristina replied. "She's my husband's ex-wife. They divorced 3 years ago. The kids lived with us for 2 years. And he didn't really raise them. He just tolerated them. You said yourself they never listened to him." Larissa Eduardovna looked surprised for a moment. She didn't expect Kristina to remember all the family drama, but quickly pulled herself together. "All the more reason to fix those mistakes," she said. "Show the children that our family knows how to forgive and help." "In my family, people take responsibility for their choices," Kristina replied. Daria sold her apartment without thinking of the kids. She got involved with a married man. Now she should fix it herself. Daria lifted her head and looked at Kristina. Anger flashed in her eyes for a moment, but she hid it. "Kristina," she said quietly, "I know I'm asking a lot, but I really have nowhere else to go. I sold the apartment. Spent the money. I thought I had a future with that man. And now you think your future is here?" Kristina asked. "I'll find a job. In a month or 2, I'll rent a room. Just give me a little time to get back on my feet." "Go to social services," Kristina said. "They can help you find temporary housing." "That's humiliating." Larissa Eduardovna jumped in. "Daria is from a good family. What's social services?" "But living off someone else isn't humiliating?" "It's not someone else," the mother-in-law shouted. "You're Igor's wife. You're part of our family. Or did you marry him just to show off your dacha?" Kristina felt her blood pressure rising. Her mother-in-law was getting personal, trying to guilt her. The dacha is mine, Kristina said calmly. I bought it with my own money before I got married. I have the right to decide who stays here. What do you mean, your property? Larissa waved her hand. You and Igor are a family. Everything is shared. The dacha was bought before the marriage. It's my private property. Selfish, the mother-in-law snapped. That's what modern wives are like, counting everything, dividing everything. Kristina interrupted her. And in your time, people didn't sell their apartments to move in with their lovers. The silence was heavy. Daria blushed. The kids looked at each other. Even Larissa Eduardovna was speechless for a second. How dare you, she finally shouted. Judging someone when they're down. Where's your heart? Where's your Christian kindness? Kindness doesn't mean being stupid, Kristina said. Daria is a grown woman. Let her deal with her own mess. And what about the children? Larissa Eduardovna grabbed the younger girl and pulled her close. Look at them. Are they guilty for their mother's mistakes? The little girl started crying. The older one angrily pulled her hand and said, Masha, stop it. Don't cry. Quiet, Lena, Daria scolded. Stay out of grown-up conversations. Kristina watched all of this, realizing the children were used to scenes like this. Tears, guilt-tripping, emotional blackmail. It was their family's way of solving problems. There's government help for kids like this, Kristina said. There are programs for families in tough situations. Government help? Larissa Eduardovna said with disgust. Forms, paperwork, humiliation. And here you are, real family. We're not real family. We barely know each other, Kristina replied. Then let's get to know each other, the mother-in-law said brightly, switching tactics. Daria is a great homemaker. The kids are well-behaved. You'll become friends. Kristina looked at Daria, who was putting on a sad face, but her eyes showed irritation. She clearly understood the plan wasn't working and was annoyed about wasting her time. I don't want to be friends with people who barge into my life without being invited, Kristina said. Barge in? Larissa Eduardovna threw up her hands. We're only asking for help for just a month or two. You're not asking, you're demanding, Kristina said. You brought all your things, picked rooms, made a meal plan. That's not asking. We didn't have time, her mother-in-law, Larissa Eduardovna, replied. The kids need a roof over their heads. Then take them to a hotel. Or to your place. I live in a one-room apartment, the mother-in-law snapped. And hotels cost money, which we don't have. Then go to social services. Oh, here we go again. Larissa exploded. Social services. You sound like a broken record. Your social services. This is your family. Your duty. This is not my family and not my duty, Kristina said. She turned around and walked toward the house. The conversation was going nowhere. Her mother-in-law wouldn't back down, and Kristina wasn't about to give in. Kristina, Larissa shouted behind her. Come back. We're not done talking. But Kristina had already gone inside. She peeked through the curtain. Larissa was by the gate, waving her arms and speaking heatedly to Daria, who nodded but looked more and more annoyed. The kids had settled on the suitcases and pulled out their phones. They were clearly bored of all the adult drama. The older girl played a game, and the younger one watched cartoons. Kristina sat down and tried to calm herself. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was racing. She wasn't used to open conflict, but she knew she had to stay firm. She checked the time. 11:30. Normally, she'd be watering the flowers or starting lunch by now. Jaeger, her husband, would be waking up any minute. He never slept past noon, even on weekends. Right on cue, she heard him cough in the bedroom. Kristina went to him. Jaeger was sitting up, rubbing his eyes. Good morning, he said with a yawn. What time is it? 11:30. That late? He looked at her closely. Something wrong? You look pale. Your mom's here, Kristina said. With Daria. And the kids. Jaeger instantly woke up. He jumped out of bed and rushed to the window. It faced the back, but he could still see the car. Damn, he muttered. I thought she wouldn't actually do it.
She did.
Brought their stuff, picked rooms. Now she's standing at the gate waiting for me to change my mind. And are you?
No.
Jaeger was quiet, staring out the window. Kristina could see he was torn, stuck between his wife and his mother. Maybe we should talk to her again, he suggested. Explain things calmly. I already did. I stood at the gate for 30 minutes trying to explain. She doesn't want to hear it. But she's not stupid. There has to be a middle ground. Kristina looked at him. He still hoped for peace, not realizing his mother had already declared war.
Fine, she said.
Go talk to her. But get dressed first. Jaeger threw on jeans and a t-shirt. Kristina watched him leave and returned to the window. As soon as his mother saw him, she lit up and rushed to the gate, speaking quickly and loudly. Even through the glass, Kristina could hear her rising voice. Jaeger stood on their side of the fence, listening, sometimes nodding or shaking his head. Daria joined in too. The kids looked up from their phones to watch. The talk lasted about 10 minutes. Kristina could see Jaeger's face growing darker. Larissa was gesturing wildly, pointing at the kids, then the house. Daria sighed and nodded sadly. Finally, Jaeger turned and walked back toward the house. His mother yelled something after him, but he didn't respond. Well, Kristina asked when he came in. Mama's furious, he said. She says you're a cold-hearted egoist and that the kids will end up on the street because of you. And what did you say? I told her the dacha is yours, and it's your decision. Kristina let out a relieved breath. She'd been afraid he'd fold under the pressure, but he didn't. My mom said if we don't let them stay today, she'll never speak to me again, he said. So what?
Kristina asked.
What can I do? He shrugged. You're my wife. I can't go against you. Kristina hugged him. She knew this wasn't easy for him. His mother had always been the biggest authority in his life. Going against her meant breaking his whole worldview. Maybe we should think about it again, he said uncertainly. The kids didn't do anything wrong. Kristina interrupted. If we give in now, we won't be able to say no later. Your mom will see that pressure works. But she's not being cruel. She just wants to help. No, she wants to show she's the boss. Daria is just an excuse. He stayed silent. He knew Kristina was right, but it was hard to admit. Then loud voices came from outside. Kristina looked out the window. His mother was back at the gate, yelling toward the house, waving her arms. Kristina, she shouted. Come out, let's talk like adults. Daria added. Tell your wife the kids are tired. They need to rest. The younger girl started crying. The older one yanked her hand and whispered something angrily. Maybe we should go outside? Suggested. Explain it again? No, Kristina said firmly. This conversation is over. Let them leave. But his mother wasn't backing down. She now started yelling loud enough for the neighbors to hear. People, she cried. Look at this. A young wife is kicking children out onto the street. Where's the heart? Where's the humanity? Neighbors peeked over their fences. The summer house village was small. Everyone knew each other. The fight quickly drew attention. Larissa Eduardovna, he said, walking out. Stop it. The neighbors have nothing to do with this. Let them know what kind of wife you have, his mom snapped. Clearly you don't care about the children. They're not our responsibility. What do you mean not yours? She said, shocked. Daria was your wife. Those girls lived in our house 3 years ago. Now they're strangers. Strangers? She gasped. Family is never strangers. Daria chose to leave me, Igor said calmly. She didn't care about family then. Daria flinched. She didn't expect him to bring that up. Even his mother looked stunned for a moment. People changed, she said. Daria made a mistake. Can't she be forgiven? Forgiving her doesn't mean we have to solve her problems. But the children, his mother said, her voice starting to crack. You used to love them. You read them stories, carried them on your shoulders. I tolerated them, Igor said coldly. Because I loved Daria. That love ended when she left me for someone else. Kristina listened from inside, surprised. She never thought her husband could be so firm. Usually he avoided conflict and tried to keep peace. But now he was speaking clearly and directly. Daria interrupted. Don't you feel anything? We were a family. You and I were a family, he said. The kids were always yours. I just played the role of stepfather. But you're not a cruel man, she insisted. Can you really watch them suffer? They're suffering because of your choices, not mine. Daria realized that emotional guilt wasn't working. Her face changed, becoming cold. I see, she said. Your new wife taught you to be selfish. My new wife taught me to protect my family. What family? Larissa Eduardovna interrupted. You're not even planning to have kids. Why did you marry? That's none of your business, Igor said coldly. How is it not my business? I'm your mother. I have a right to know your plans. You have the right to ask. But you don't have the right to demand answers. Larissa Eduardovna was stunned into silence. She didn't recognize her son anymore. The calm, obedient Jaeger suddenly seemed like a different person. What did she do to you? His mother whispered. That's not you talking. She turned you against us. She helped me understand what boundaries are, Jaeger replied. That I don't have to take on other people's problems. Family shouldn't mean carrying someone else's burden. But Daria is family, his mother argued. She chose to stop being part of this family, Jaeger said firmly. His mother's voice shook. Then what about me? Am I not family too? Jaeger paused. Kristina could see how hard it was for him to find the right words. You are family, he said finally. But you don't get to make decisions for me. I'm an adult now. An adult. His mother gave a bitter laugh. An adult doesn't abandon children in need. I'm not abandoning anyone, Jaeger said calmly. I'm just not taking responsibility for someone else's choices. Someone else's? She shouted. She was your wife. Her kids are your responsibility. Was my wife, Jaeger emphasized. That's the key word, was. Just then, another car pulled up. A gray Volkswagen stopped near the gate. Kristina recognized it. It was Ivan Petrovich, the local police officer. Probably a neighbor had complained about the shouting. The tall officer got out of the car and walked over. Ivan was well known in the area, fair, but strict about keeping the peace. What's going on here? He asked. Breaking up a family, said Jaeger's mother loudly. The new wife is throwing children out into the street. No one is being thrown out, Jaeger replied. We're just not letting uninvited people stay in our house. Uninvited, his mother shouted. They're family. The officer scanned the scene, suitcases, crying kids, and upset adults. He quickly understood what was happening. Ma'am, he said to Daria. Are these your children? Yes, she said quietly. Do you have anywhere to stay? Not yet. We were hoping. I see, he said, pulling out a notepad. Have you contacted social services? Not yet. You should. I'll give you the address. But for now, please keep the noise down. The neighbors are complaining. But the kids, Jaeger's mother cried. They have nowhere to go. That's not a reason to disturb the peace, said the officer. Family issues need to be handled privately. But how can it be private? They're his relatives, she protested. Family or not, that's not my concern, he said. My job is to keep order here. Then he turned to Jaeger. Is this your property? It belongs to my wife, but I live here too, said Jaeger. And do you want these people to stay? No, I don't. Then that's the end of it. The officer turned to Daria. Ma'am, please pack your things and leave. Go to the social service office. But where will we go? She asked helplessly. That's for you to figure out. Just not here. Jaeger's mother realized the fight was lost. The law wasn't on their side. She looked at her son with pure hatred. Remember this day, she said. The day you betrayed your family. I didn't betray anyone, Jaeger replied calmly. I'm protecting my family. What family? She snapped, pointing at the house. That woman. She's my wife, Jaeger said firmly. And if you insult her again, we're done talking for good. His mother opened her mouth, but said nothing. She knew she'd gone too far. Daria quietly began loading the bags back into her car. The children helped her, already used to packing what little they had. Jaeger's mother stood frozen. Mama, Jaeger said, help Daria with the bags. Do it yourself, she replied bitterly. Since you think you're so noble. I'll help pay for a room, said Yeager. 20,000 for the first month. Nothing more. Darya looked up. How much? 20,000. That's enough for now. That's nothing, his mother snapped. Where can they live for that? She'll find work, Yeager said. Then she'll be fine. Darya nodded. She understood that was all she was getting. Yeager's mother still hoped for a miracle. Yeager, she said in a pleading voice, think again. These are children. I've been thinking for 3 days, he said. This is my decision. She realized she'd lost him. All her life, Yeager had listened to her. Now he was suddenly acting for himself. Fine, she said coldly. Live your life. Just don't expect help from me. I'm not expecting anything, he replied. Then don't come running when she leaves you. I won't. Yeager's mother climbed into her car with a stone face. Darya settled the kids in the back seat and took the front passenger seat. Mama, the younger girl asked, where are we going? To Aunt Larissa's, Darya said tiredly. For now, we're just figuring things out. After that, we'll find a new home. The car engine started. Larissa Eduardovna didn't say goodbye to her son. She silently turned the car around and headed toward the exit. Darya waved from the window, not to Yeager, but to the local police officer, to thank him for his help. Yeager stood at the gate, watching the car drive away. Kristina came out of the house and walked over to him. How are you feeling? She asked. Okay, Yeager said. Hard, but okay. Do you regret it? Regret what? Fighting with your mom? Yeager was quiet for a moment. I don't know, he admitted. I'm still not sure how I feel. Kristina took his hand. Thank you, she said softly, for standing by me. I'm your husband, Yeager replied simply. Who else would I stand by? They walked back into the house. Yeager sat on the couch and buried his face in his hands. Kristina sat next to him. I feel like I just lost my mother, he said. Maybe you did, Kristina said gently, but you gained a real family. One where everyone takes responsibility for their own actions. Yeager nodded. He knew she was right, but that didn't make it hurt any less. What happens now? He asked. We live, Kristina said. We live our life. She got up and walked to the garden beds. The tomatoes still needed watering. The first few weeks after the fight were filled with anxiety. Kristina kept wondering if Larissa Eduardovna would try to pressure them again. Yeager was quiet and distant. He often took out his phone, typed in his mother's number, but never called. After a month, it became clear his mother was giving him the silent treatment. No calls. No messages. No contact at all, like he had stopped existing. Yeager pretended it didn't bother him, but Kristina could see it did. Maybe you should call her, she suggested one evening. Why? Yeager said, scrolling through his phone without looking up. She said she never wants to see me again. People say things when they're angry. Not my mom. She always means it. And he was right. Larissa Eduardovna really wasn't backing down. And the silence? That was just the beginning. 2 weeks later, the first calls from relatives started coming. Aunt Galina, his mother's sister, called him at work. Yegorushka, she said with a scolding tone. What have you done? Your mother is a mess. Her blood pressure is through the roof. She says you betrayed her for some woman. Aunt Galia, Yeager answered tiredly. I didn't betray anyone. I just stopped letting people control my life. But there were children involved. Was it really that hard to help? It was hard to say no to my family for the sake of strangers. Darya's not a stranger. She was your wife. My ex-wife for 3 years now. Aunt Galina sighed and started lecturing him about family values. Yeager listened quietly, occasionally replying with short answers. The conversation ended without any agreement. Neither side was willing to back down. After that, cousin Alina called. Then Uncle Vitya. Then more distant relatives. Clearly, Larissa Eduardovna had told everyone her version of the story. In her version, Kristina was a cruel, selfish woman who turned Yeager against his mother and kicked helpless children out onto the street. Your mom's a real storyteller, Kristina said after another call. She knows exactly which buttons to push. She's always been like that, Yeager replied. I just never noticed before. Why not? Because I never had a reason to. I always did what she said. Kristina nodded. She understood Jaeger was on a long journey, learning to free himself from his mother's control. And from the looks of it, Larissa Eduardovna had no intention of making that journey easy. Daria and the kids disappeared from their lives as quickly as they'd appeared. Jaeger sent her the promised 20,000 rubles. That was the last they heard from her. Kristina sometimes wondered what had happened to that woman, but she didn't ask. That summer, they often went to the dacha. Kristina enjoyed the peace and quiet. No one tried to force unwanted guests on them.
No one asked how they spent their time.
Jaeger slowly relaxed. He started learning how to make his own decisions. You know, he said one day while watering the garden, I really like this life, without someone always looking over my shoulder. You get used to freedom, Kristina smiled.
Yeah.
And I realized I wasn't living my own life before. In the fall, they heard the first news about Daria. Aunt Galina called again. She'd run into her at the job center. Can you believe it? She told Jaeger on the phone. She's working as a cleaner in an office building and renting a room in a shared apartment on the edge of the city. The kids go to a new school. They complain they don't like it. I see, Igor replied shortly. Can't you help them at least with money? His aunt insisted. I'm not going to, he said. But they're just children. They're her responsibility. She's their mother. You've become so cold, Igor. No, just fair. After that, Aunt Galina stopped calling. She must have realized Igor had changed for good. One winter day, Kristina ran into Daria at the mall. Daria was working for a cleaning company, mopping the floors in one of the stores. She looked tired and thinner, but not miserable. When she saw Kristina, she didn't turn away.
Hi, Daria said.
Just hi, Kristina replied. How are you? I'm fine. I work. The kids are in school. We've gotten used to everything. That's good. Yes. Daria was quiet for a moment, then added, You know, at first I was mad at you. Thought you were heartless. But later, I realized you were right.
Why?
Because I created this mess myself. It wasn't right to make others clean it up. Kristina nodded. She hadn't expected that kind of honesty. How are the kids? She asked. They're adjusting. My oldest even said this new school is better, less show-offy, more down-to-earth. And, do you regret it? Regret what? Getting involved with that man.
Yes.
I also regret selling my apartment. But moving in with you guys?
No.
I don't regret not doing that. Why not? Because I realized I can't live at someone else's expense. I need to be responsible for my own life. They said goodbye, and Kristina walked away feeling relieved. Daria was managing. The kids were okay. Everything had worked out the way it was supposed to. In spring, Aunt Galina told them that Daria had started dating a man, an electrician from the office building she cleaned. He was single and didn't mind that she had kids. They say it's serious, she told them. They might even get married. That's good, Igor replied. I wish them happiness. But your mom still holds a grudge against you. I know. Maybe it's time to make peace? It's been years. She knows my number, Igor said. If she wants to talk, she can call. But Larissa Eduardovna never called. 1 year passed. Then 2. Then 3. Still nothing. She stayed silent, punishing her son for disobeying her. Kristina would sometimes see her in stores or on the street. Each time, she was shocked at how much her mother-in-law had aged. She looked hunched over and thin. Her eyes were dull. She didn't dye or style her hair anymore. Larissa always turned away when she saw Kristina, pretending not to notice her. But Kristina could tell she was watching, searching her face for signs of regret or unhappiness. Your mom looks much older now, she told Igor after one of those run-ins. It's age, he said indifferently. It's not just age. It's loneliness. That's her choice. Don't you feel sorry for her? Igor was quiet for a moment. I do, he admitted. But I can't do anything. She chose this war. What if you were the first to make peace? If I do that, it means I'm saying I was wrong. She'll take it as a win, and next time, she'll push even harder. Kristina understood.
He was right.
Larissa Eduardovna wasn't someone who knew how to forgive. For her, reconciliation meant admitting defeat.
For years went by.
Kristina and Igor lived a calm, steady life. They worked, spent time at their dacha, and started planning for kids. Larissa still didn't speak to them, but by now, even the relatives had stopped trying to get them to make peace. Everyone understood the conflict had hit a dead end. One morning, Kristina was walking to work and saw a familiar figure in the grocery store. It was Larissa Eduardovna, her mother-in-law. She was standing near the dairy section, studying the prices of kefir. She looked even older than last time. Her jacket hung loosely, her bag was worn out, and her shoes were run down. Kristina walked closer. Larissa was choosing the cheapest kefir and counting small coins in her wallet. It was clear she didn't have enough money even for basic food. Larissa Eduardovna, Kristina said softly. Her mother-in-law turned around. Fear flashed in her eyes, then anger, then something that looked like despair. What do you want? She asked hoarsely. Just to say hello. How are you? Great, Larissa answered with pride. I don't burden anyone. I take care of myself.
Kristina nodded.
She could see Larissa was lying. A small pension, no support from her only son, and too much pride to ask for help. All of it left the old woman barely surviving. Maybe you should talk to Jaeger? Kristina suggested. It's been a long time. No need, Larissa said sharply. I'm doing just fine without your charity. It's not charity. It's family. I don't have a family, Larissa said bitterly. My son chose another woman. He chose his wife. He chose betrayal. Kristina realized there was no point continuing. In 4 years, Larissa Eduardovna hadn't changed at all. She still believed she was right, and her son was a traitor. All right, Kristina said. As you wish. She turned and walked away. Larissa watched her leave with a look full of resentment and hate. That evening, Kristina told her husband about the meeting. Jaeger listened silently, nodding now and then. She's proud, he said. She'll never ask for help. And you? Would you offer it? No, Jaeger said after a pause. She chose this path herself. Even if she's struggling? Struggling doesn't mean she's right. Fair doesn't always feel kind. Kristina nodded. She understood her husband. For 4 years, Larissa punished her son for not obeying her, ignored his life, and never accepted his right to live as he chose. Now, she was living with the consequences of her own decisions. Another 2 years passed. Kristina sometimes saw her mother-in-law in stores, on the street, or at the clinic. Larissa had become a typical lonely old woman, hunched over, poorly dressed, and with dull eyes. She still turned away when she saw Kristina, but no longer with open hostility. Now she just acted like she didn't see her. Kristina often thought that Larissa still didn't understand what happened 6 years ago. She still believed her son had betrayed her for another woman. She didn't realize he had simply grown up and learned to set boundaries. Maybe, if Larissa had stepped back then, accepted her son's independence, things would have turned out differently. But she chose war, and she lost. Kristina remembered that Saturday when she stood at the gate and refused to let in uninvited guests. That was the first time she ever said no to her mother-in-law, and she realized then that respect must be earned, not given automatically with age. Since then, the gate had become a symbol to her, a symbol of personal boundaries, of the right to live your own life, of the truth that family doesn't mean emotional blackmail. Kristina never regretted that decision. She protected her home, her family, and her peace, and helped her husband do the same. Larissa Eduardovna ended up alone not because her son was cruel, but because she couldn't accept his adulthood, couldn't let go, and couldn't forgive. She chose this ending, and now she had to live with it.